G'day everyone, it's Warren here from NQ Explorers. If you're new to the hobby, welcome to prospecting. Today we're going to look at some of the basic setup and control features on the new Garrett Axiom to maximise your chances of finding gold. Let's get into it. Let's say you're looking forward to that weekend prospecting trip, a day out, maybe the whole weekend. Maybe you're on that big lap around the country visiting various goldfields. Let's set up the Axiom to maximise your chances of finding small gold nuggets and not missing the big deep ones. But before we get into the settings, let's have a look at what Axiom actually is. It's a pulse induction metal detector using Garrett's new ultra pulse technology. The other type of metal detector you may use prospecting or have heard of is the VLF or constant wave metal detector, such as the Goldmaster 24K or an AT Gold. Those style of detectors are great on small gold, but they struggle in very hot soils, which is typical of many of the goldfields in Australia. So most Australian prospectors will use a pulse induction metal detector. The other advantage of a pulse induction metal detector is you can run a monoloop coil, like this one I've got on here. That's the 11-inch monoloop coil that comes standard with the machine. Monoloop windings allow for much greater sensitivity on tiny targets, low conductive targets such as small gold, as opposed to a double D coil, which will be slightly less sensitive on small targets but will run quieter in hot ground. So there's always a trade-off in prospecting. You can adjust the settings accordingly, but most prospectors in Australia will run a monoloop coil based on the ground conditions where they're prospecting. You must remember too, if you're new to the hobby, that it is a motion detector. A motion detector, that means that it has to be moving to hear a target. If you just sit it on the ground on a target, you won't get any response. Okay, you got your new metal detector, what do you do next? Put some hours in, this is what I would advise. You've got to put time in on these machines to know how they operate and listen to the signals. Axiom has some fairly advanced features, but having said that, it is a switch on and go metal detector. Is so easy to use. Simply turn it on, ground balance it, do a frequency scan, leave it in the factory defaults if you like, and you're away. Where do you go with it? Well, it may seem obvious, but you go to a goldfield. First thing you have to do is check your local state or territory authority, usually the mining departments. I'll put links at the bottom for what miner's right or Fossicking permit you need before you go out prospecting for precious metals such as gold. There are various fees payable to each of the authorities. Once you've got yourself sorted with that, you can do that online before you go. Research the goldfield you're going to. A little bit about the gold deposition in that goldfield and where you're going to maximise your chances to detect gold nuggets. That may be around old workings, old shaft collars, that kind of thing. Where in this goldfield are the nuggety areas. Deep lead mines do exist in most goldfields, but generally you're looking for shallow alluvial stuff with a metal detector, alluvial nuggets. But of course you will get specimens on old mullock heaps and that kind of thing. Have a look into your local goldfield, see where the old timers won the gold and how it was won, and that'll maximise your chances of getting your first piece of gold. Two levels of control. Direct access through the grey keys, all clearly labelled in English, no confusing pictograms. And then there's a menu button where you go into the internal settings and you can adjust the settings there accordingly. First button we look at is the on-off switch. It's labelled operate. Clearly turns the machine on and off. The operate label refers to when you're in a menu item and you want to go back to detecting, you just press operate and you leave the menu system. To the right of that you've got the volume controls up and down, fairly self-explanatory. Just tune that to however you want with your ears. If you're running the MS3 Wi-Fi system, well, you've got a volume control in there too. Your sensitivity on the top, direct access, increase and decrease your sensitivity. Generally I'd recommend you run flat out, but that's based on your local conditions and how noisy the ground is. Then you've got the the large menu button in the centre, which accesses the internal menu items. It's also the iron check feature. You just hold that, wave it across the target, and you get the iron audio on a ferrous target. Personally, I tend not to use that because I have found gold that checks as iron, like gold, for example, gold and ironstone. So be very wary of using the iron check. It's really a dig all target situation when you're prospecting realistically. Then on the right, we've got the threshold controls, increase, decrease your threshold. You can go to a negative threshold. Once again, a personal preference. Most people like to run a slight threshold so you can hear any variations and therefore possibly faint targets, deep, large targets or very small targets. Some people prefer not to have that threshold buzz, but that's very personal. And on the right, we've got the ground balance button. Okay, the internal menu items. Just hold the menu key, just bump it. You get a rectangle around the item that you're controlling. So let's go through the menu items. You've got mode, that's your timings. So you've got fine, normal, large and salt. There are various pulse timings depending on where you're detecting. Next menu item, if you scroll through past the mode, is your frequency scan. You run that whenever you're having any EMI interference. The machine is very well shielded. I've never had real issues with EMI, but run your frequency scan anyway before you start detecting. It runs through 100 different frequencies, chooses the best 5, and then it checks those 5 again and selects the best 1 frequency to operate on for the day or for whatever your conditions are. So the next item after your frequency scan that's adjustable is your tone. That's your audio tone. The menu item labelled audio is actually your 2 types of audio that you may want to run. 01's a default. That's the VCO audio with a nice clean target peak. 00 is the PWM audio, which is selectable, but it's not the default. And that's like the old 2-tone audio on an ATX, for example, with the high-low tones. After that, we've got the linking system for the MS3 Wi-Fi headphones. Just a matter of holding that, pressing the up button and linking with your headphones. Then you've got a backlight for low light conditions, if you need to hunt at night, for example. Speed control is your swing speed. It's also a kind of a control of your target separation. Generally leave it on slow because you don't want to be belting around, high speed. But if you want to cover a bit of ground and you've got a bigger coil on, moving fairly quickly, you can set your swing speed to a faster speed. But it may be more susceptible to ground noise if you actually increase your spring speed. But another one would I just leave on slow. And the next menu item after that is your ground tracking, which I would generally leave to off. That's how the machine adjusts to varying ground conditions. If you find you are getting a lot of variation in your ground balance, and you're ground balancing a lot and you're moving through a bit of ground, you can put a bit of ground tracking in, but once again that could be potentially sacrificing sensitivity and depth. So my recommendations really for the settings are the defaults. So you've got fine gold timings, ground track off and swing speed slow. Okay, there's some of the basic features on the new Axiom. Now let's do a day trip into the bush. We'll head into the goldfields, set up the machine there and listen to some target audio. Okay, we're up in the goldfields. We'll set the machine up and then we'll go out and dig some targets. Right, let's power up. Frequency scan it. Now where I am today is very heavily mineralised, plus it's variable. It's quite a challenge for a machine because there's so much variability in the ground and lots of hot rocks. And I'm running that 11-inch mono there today. I've also got double D coils in the car. I've got a 13 double D. Okay, selected frequency 86. We'll go to operate. Let's check our setup. We've got fine gold timings. No headphones so you can hear it. Speed, swing speed slow. Ground track is off. Okay, we're good to go. Let's ground balance it. Here, how quickly that ground balanced. We've got a 48/25 reading. What's the machine sound like in the ground? Now this is hot and it's variable. As you can hear, I'll just run that threshold up for you so you can hear it. Okay, this is the situation we're dealing with. Okay, so you're not going to have any trouble picking targets out of that. Axiom runs beautifully quiet in this hot ground. And as you can see, I can scrub this coil, no drama at all. Okay, now we've got the machine set up. Fine gold timings, ground track off, swing speed slow. We've got an 11-inch mono bolted on there. I'll go out into the bush and I'll dig live the first target I hear so you can hear some target audio. Maybe gold, it may not, but that doesn't matter. We'll just go and listen to some target audio. It's in the default VCO audio, which is a lovely, sweet, single-tone audio. Let's get into it. It's all about swing technique now. Keep the coil parallel to the ground, scrubbing the ground if you can. You won't miss a target. With the machine being this quiet, this close to the ground, and with the sensitivity of 11-inch mono. I've just come through that bit of quartz and rubbly ironstone patch there, a bit of bare spot. Obviously there's a lot of deadfall up here and that's a challenge, but you've got to keep that coil on the ground. Well, that's what it sounds like up here. With the Axiom, I've got the sensitivity flat out and the settings as I showed you earlier on. Okay, let's have a look at some target audio. I've got a signal here. It's quite loud and shallow, I would suggest, but the machine's not overloading, so it might be a small target. There's a sort of proportionality to the audio. Anything at depth will be a fainter signal than anything close to coil, obviously, but let's have a listen to this. It's showing this really hot orangey shale here, and you can hear that threshold, dead stable. Now if we come up on this little green bush here, I'm going to start to get a target on the tip of the mono there. Okay, it's obviously loud and it's shallow. But that's what VCO audio, the default audio, sounds like. It's a lovely, sweet single tone on a target. And as I get close to the target, with the nose of that mono, you can hear the volume increasing. So I'll go live on this, and we'll see what we come up with. Just by way of demonstration, so you know what we're listening for in the bush. Okay. We'll set the machine aside because the pick, being a big lump of iron, obviously sets it off a little bit there. I'll just move them aside there. Okay, so the target appears to be here somewhere. I'll just scratch it, it's probably a shallow thing. But the ground's quite shallow, you can see the shale there, that's bedrock. That's the bottom. Yeah, see, I've moved it obviously. It's just going to be junk, but that's alright. You can hear what the audio sounds like. It's a fairly clean kind of audio I'm getting there though. Let's get set up here. But yeah, that's not likely to be gold obviously, it's just come off the surface. Pretty piece of bird shot. Yeah, birdshot. Little ball of lead. So that anyway is a demonstration of the VCO audio on Axiom. I mean, at depth it's going to sound softer, and as you get closer to the coil you get much louder audio. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little video, everyone, on basic controls on the Axiom and a little bit of audio. Really, Axiom is switch on and go, but it's very much suited to an experienced prospector as much as a new chum. If it's your first machine, switch on and go, easy to use. If you're an experienced prospector, there's lots of things you can play with in the menu system to maximise your chance on gold. And I probably don't need to explain that to you, but I will have an advanced features video coming up soon, going through the pulse timings and ground track and speed and things like that. So and how that affects what you're doing in the bush. But thanks for watching, everybody, and happy Fossicking. Bye for now.